radio TV phono nut here, and we have a Clarion superhet. Obviously it's a radio from about 1933. This is an AC-DC model, meaning it has no power transformer and a series string filament circuit, and one of these resistance line cords that has the third resistance element built into it to drop down the excess voltage across the tube filaments. And this one still has all of its back cover retainer screws as well as the chassis retainer screws, so that tells me that either this set has never been worked on, or whoever worked on it was very conscious about keeping up with the screws and putting them all back, which is something we rarely see. Okay, measuring the resistance across the power plug with the switch on, we get absolutely nothing. So that tells us we have either an open power switch, an open tube filament, or an open resistance element in this line cord. And out of the three possibilities, it's most likely an open resistance element in the line cord. So let's get it apart, see what it looks like, see if we can get this joker to play. Alright, top side of the chassis looks to be in pretty good shape. This is a 5-tube set with a pilot lamp. It's really a bit rare to find a superhet radio built into one of these small cases like this. Usually these curtain burner radios and the small wooden cabinets are TRF sets, and they usually don't perform that well, so maybe this one being a superhet, it will do better. Now let's look under the chassis and see what kind of surprises await us. Lots of paper capacitors that look to be original, but it looks like some electrolytic capacitors have been changed, such as this one here, and possibly that one there looks like one that was tacked in, and then this big honker here may be the original, I don't know. But at any rate, this thing hasn't been serviced recently, probably not since the 1940s, I'd say. Okay, our off-on switch was open, but spraying some cleaner in the switch and applying some AC to the radio and flipping the switch back and forth a few times got it to working again. Alright, that's a good sign. We're running about 100 volts AC input and getting some garbled reception. So maybe we'll get lucky and this will be just a cap job. Okay, here's one of the replacement condenser blocks. Dry electrolytic condenser. 4 and 20 microfarad, 175 volts. Designed for replacement in simplex radio model V. Color code red 20, blue 4, and black common negative. Alright, I just slapped in temporarily some filter capacitors.
But when it's located well, it's very, very good.
Just to see what would happen, and you can hear what's happening. And that's just with the little stub of an antenna wire hanging off. And of course, this coupling capacitor for the audio output tube is leaky as all get out. Disconnecting the grid side, we have 70 volts coming out of there. Okay, here's the coupling cap for the output tube replaced. And these filter capacitors, they're just temporarily where they are. Once I get all the other capacitors replaced and decide where I'm going to put our filament dropping resistor, then I'll determine where the permanent home for these electrolytics is going to be. And yeah, this one's got quite a few paper capacitors in it, so let's check we know it's bad, but let's just check the coupling capacitor on the tester here and see how it checks. Alright, I don't even get an eye opening of any kind as far as checking for value. Now let's check for leakage. Yeah, it's basically shorted. When the light comes on and stays on at 20 volts, and that pretty much tells you the story. That capacitor is shorted, and I think we can assume that all the rest of them are going to be just as bad. And since we know the radio is capable of receiving stations, and that tells us that all the major organs are most likely good, So we can just go ahead and get rid of these old capacitors and be done with it. In fact, off camera, whenever I was playing the radio, something momentarily shorted and my current draw spiked up for a second. And I feel like that might have been one of these capacitors arcing on the inside and getting ready to short full blast. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of those before we go any further with this. Okay, here are all the paper capacitors that we replaced, 11 of them to be exact, and that's a pretty good number for just a little 5-tube AM radio. This capacitor here in this metal can is the cathode bypass cap for the detector and first audio tube. Never seen one noted quite like this one, 1/2 microfarad. And yes, it's just as leaky as all the other ones. On that note, all of these capacitors, well, they're no longer capacitors. They're now resistors, and some of them are, I believe, are dangerously close to becoming a piece of wire, if you know what I mean. Here are the 2 electrolytic condensers that I believe were replacements from a long time ago, and those are just dried out and wide open, nothing to them at all. And some resistors that I replaced. I didn't touch them if they were pretty well within tolerance, but if they were way out of tolerance like these 3 were, I went ahead and replaced them. And here's what it looks like under the chassis now. I put a terminal strip over here to mount the filter capacitors on, and then another terminal strip to mount the 0.47 microfarad capacitor that's we used to replace this thing. So now we'll fire it up and see if it works. Hopefully we didn't goof up and make it worse than what it was.
Agree that we're going to play all the way through and be done with both in 3 years. I'm with you. Let's do the house first.
Alright, there we are. Just like before, it seems like it takes this thing a very long time to warm up, so we may want to look into that.
Battle and win the war, my brother. You know, she stood right next to me laughing at me. And I love the, but when they bring them in, they want you. That is starting to get. Tag would have paid him either the top 5 or the top 10 based on some other details.
And yeah, that volume control is in the antenna circuit or the front end.
He's getting the average of the top 10.
And I don't think this set has an AVC circuit in it either, so
way underpaid. If that would have
happened. But the sound quality is better than the average TRF set of this style, so that's good. And I suspect that once we align everything, the reception will be better than the typical TRF set of this design, or should I say of this style.
In the scheme of everything. Okay.
That's probably our country station from Monroe, Louisiana.
The 2 uses. I want to see them. I've got a little suggestion for you. It's for 2 minutes of your time. .com right now. Now is the best time to reset and revisit how you're looking after your home and family. With that in mind, there's only one security to make benefit.
And yeah, this resistance line cord is running a little bit warm, not uncomfortably warm by no sense of the word. And the key to those resistance line cords is to make sure they're unwound when you plug them in. Don't plug one in with the cord wrapped in a bundle, because that's when they get really hot.
trees, and debris.
We got them out. We helped a lot of people out. It felt good to know I could really make a difference.
Because I'm a citizen soldier in the National Guard.
Be there the moment your community needs you. Learn more at nationalguard.com.
Sponsored by the Mississippi National Guard, aired by the Mississippi Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Let the professionals at Southern Duplicating show you how to manage your business.
Speaker's got a little rattle to it, but
One of our Capacitor multifunctional products that copy, print, scan, and fax. We are a total document solution.
may have to look into that. But
Document solutions that enable businesses to better manage the flow of information, ideas, increase performance, and reduce costs. We provide local service.
No dozen fish is safe from you this season when you go to Garrett's Complete Honey Outfitters. Get a shotgun from Stover, Browning, Benelli, Ponchi, Winchester, and Remington. Dog shells starting at $59.99 a case. Complete hunting and work outfit.
We're big enough to handle a farm. Imagine what we can do for your lawn and garden. Lauderdale County Farm Supply, your complete farm supply dealer for the professional farmer and the local gardener. Visit Lauderdale County Farm Supply's complete garden center. Teeny tropical and houseplants, shrubbery, and water garden supplies. Plus mulch, sod, and stone, even 59 in Meridian. It's where to grow.
Meridian's news talk station. AM 1010. WMOX.
Well, the first thing is to get rid of the idea that only lucky people get to retire.
All right.
Yeah.
alright, our B plus at the cathode of the rectifier is running about 120 volts, so that looks pretty good. As far as our resistance line cord, I'm probably just going to replace that with a chassis mountable power resistor. And there's plenty enough space to mount one, either on the rear apron or up here on the front. I'll probably just put it on the rear back here. And that resistor happens to be 160 ohms. Notice they have on the schematic, in cord. Well, 160 ohm would be kind of hard to find today, but 150 ohms should be close enough. Oh, about 20 or 25 watts ought to do it. Alright, I've removed our resistance line cord and installed a regular 2-wire power cord. And for the resistor, my Ohm's Law calculations came out to 150 ohms and 13 watts, which, of course, we'd want to go up to a 20-watt resistor just to be on the safe side. The schematic calls for 160 ohms, which that can be explained by possibly me using a different line voltage figure than what they used back in 1933 to calculate this. And when I measured the actual resistance element of the line cord, we come up with 190 ohms, so go figure. That's probably why it was taking a little while to warm up. Now, either this was a replacement cord or maybe this is just what they used from the get-go. I don't know. Seeing as how this is a wire-wound element, I don't think it would go up in value on its own. It would just open up, if anything. Now, the only resistor I have on hand is this 200 ohm, 25 watt job. It's a chassis mount, which is what I want. And seeing as how the original element in the power cord was 190 ohms, I don't think this is going to hurt anything. Yes, it will take a longer time to warm up, and the tube filaments won't be receiving as much voltage, but the radio should still work okay once it warms up, at least until I can get the proper 150 ohm chassis mount resistor. Or what I could do is just place another high resistance, high value resistor in parallel with this to bring the resistance down a little bit, and we may do that. Now, as far as mounting, I'm going to drill a couple of holes in the back plane of the chassis, and it was very nice of them to make that back plane removable, make it a lot easier for me to deal with. And then we will bolt this resistor to the chassis, and the chassis should provide a suitable heat sink. These types of resistors here are designed to be mounted to a metal chassis or whatever. They really need to be mounted to such for proper heat dissipation, and that's what we're going to do here.
So,
all right,
but the other part
we're we're operating. It took about 3 minutes for it to warm up, but once it warmed up, it's working really well. However, I noticed the filament in this 25Z5 is not nearly as bright as the filament in the other tubes. So I'm going to have to double check and make sure these have the correct tubes in them. If somebody replaced one of the tubes with one with a different current rating, then that could certainly throw things off, or it would throw things off. Now, one of the advantages over this superhet, over the similar TRF sets that are housed in a little small wooden box like this one is better selectivity. If you recall, on the TRF sets, we had a problem between 1390 and 1450 because 1390 is so highly modulated, it pretty much just took over the whole high end of the band. But on this one, we can easily pick out what 4 crappy radio stations that we have.
The Hustler, before you buy anything else, I guarantee you're... With over 1,000 authorized dealers nationwide. Go to hustlerturf.com and find the one closest to you. That's hustlerturf.com.
And like I've said before, this radio has no AVC circuit, and the volume control is in the front end of the radio, so you're going to have to adjust the volume control on weaker stations more so than you would on a more modern set.
It might be crazy. Sometimes I feel like I take crazy pills, but whatever it is, it's the biggest story of the day. It's all for you. Sports Radio.
And carrying the same programming on 2 different local stations that are owned by different people. How stupid is that? I mean, you would think WMOX could sort of go back to their older days and at least play maybe oldies in the afternoon after they get through running Mike Gallagher. Instead of running the same Fox Sports programming crap that's on 1450, they could run some oldies from like 02 to 5 or whenever Dave Ramsey comes on, and at least that would be a little bit of music to add to the mix.
Your first year.
Okay, we're going to peek out the alignment on this. According to the schematic, our IF frequency is 465 kilocycles. You want to make note of that, especially on these older superhets, because the IF frequency can be all over the place. I've seen 175 kilocycles, 262, 455, 456, 465. And I'm sure there's some there that I've forgotten about, so we're going to let the generator warm up for 15-20 minutes, let it stabilize, and then we're going to peak this out. Alright, second IF. Whoops, wrong way. Alright, that one was pretty much right on. Alright, next trimmer. That one was a little off. Alright, first IF. That one was way off. Let's turn the generator output down some. And the last trimmer on the first IF. Oh yeah, it's a lot better. And now we can get our country station. Not bad. And I did a slight touch up on our oscillator trimmer here. According to the dial, 1700 is the top end, so we have it about there. And there's no adjustment for the RF section of that tuning condenser, so that completes the alignment.
Under this assumption,
1390 is just so, they're just so hot that it's unlistenable. And that's just because they're so overmodulated, and now that the set's aligned properly, it's just, the signal's so hot it's more than the set can handle. And they have an FM translator, which, like other AM stations that have FM translators, the FM sounds a lot better than the AM. And I think what that all boils down to is a lot of these stations are not even keeping their AM stations up. They're just keeping them on the air just so they can legally have the FM translator, and they don't give a crap what the AM sounds like. Okay, I did one thing here that was a little bit sloppy. The antenna wire, technically I should have replaced the whole wire, but where that wire is soldered to a coil is very hard to get to, and to get this coil out might be a bit risky. So what I did was just shoved a piece of heat shrink tubing over it for protection and soldered our new antenna wire to it. And then we'll just leave it at that. I'm not gonna risk damaging a coil, especially after being almost to the finish line on this radio.
Buddies start posting their first day of kindergarten pictures.
Okay,
gonna come back
with this 200 ohm resistor, I'm getting about 4.8 volts across the tubes that are supposed to have 6.3 on them, and about 21, 22 volts across the ones that are supposed to have 25 on them. Like I said, that won't keep the set from operating. It'll just take it a lot longer to warm up. And probably the next time I make a parts order, I'll probably order the correct 150 ohm resistor for this, but for right now this will do. And the only other thing, this speaker is a bit rattly, especially at high volume level.
On the other side, brother, it's better. It really is. But it is a matter of kind of withstanding that.
But we're not going to worry about that either.
What you talked about with John and I here.
Considering how old this speaker is, it's in pretty good shape, and I'm not going to mess with it and possibly make it worse than it is.
And I wish I could tell, and I want you guys,
just to give you an idea, that's 910.
Because he is the worst. Not, hey, cut me off in traffic.
That's 1010, both relatively normal volume levels. Go to 1390. And it near about blows the speaker cone into orbit. Even turning the volume on the radio way down, and it still sounds like crap. And this is something else that irritates me. This is KRJO out of Monroe, the classic country station. And even at the top of the hour, they don't identify their AM frequency, just 99.7. And I thought legally they had to identify both the AM and FM frequency at the top of the hour, but I guess not. Oh yeah, and I added a cable clamp here to make sure this power cord stays still. And yeah, one other thing I wanted to show you is on this tube here, a Type 43 sticker where the tube was purchased, Wholesale Radio Service Company, New York. Wonder if that was on Radio Row. Looked at the sticker under my video magnifier here, and I can just barely make it out, but it looked like October something another, 1930 something, so we don't know the exact year, but 1930s, yeah, that was a long time ago. Okay, we're back together. Every screw accounted for, both the rear cover screw and the screws and the chassis mounting bolts. So that's good. It's always good not to have any screws left over or none missing. Okay, we're back together, and this one has a green pilot light where most of them had either a red or an amber colored light.
prone to this type of thing.
Like information at Electrolytic Chapter with that story.
Those COVID-19 outbreaks include the larger islands of Jamaica and Cuba. According to Reuters, that's due in large measure to social gatherings and quarantine violations by visitors who are less than compliant with the pandemic protocol. This is causing growing concerns as the total confirmed cases. New Jersey.
Capacitor is down on my they're all part of the team, and
that's an A+ rating with the BBB. Imagine.
There's people that are terrified. Future results. Here's a real estate.
Guys, you got to get her standing at the plate. He's looking dead red. You get the ball up.
Religioso de EWTN y no lo veo.
Sounds like WSM coming in faintly. It'll probably get better a little bit later in the evening. But yeah, this thing does pretty good with a outside antenna. Yeah, that's WSM.
Sinus Center. Call 457-7911. 457-7911. That's 457-7911.
This is the Tiger Tip-Off Show on the LSU Sports Radio Network. Time now to visit with LSU head coach Will Wade. Brought to you by...
Must be WWL.
No problem finding every single. I'm not looking for the government to give me money.
Yeah, really, there wasn't really nothing out of the ordinary wrong with this one.
You
just
know,
the usual
everybody else
bad capacitors and few bad resistors. Although it was more of a capacitor problem with this one.
You show your true character when it matters. And is this a handout? Or is this like...
That's about all I've got for this one. So we're ready to put it on the shelf and move to another exciting project a little bit later.